Desperate girl calls the police, and what she said changed everything. What would you do if one phone call could change your life forever? Today's story will leave you speechless, as one young woman dials 911, and what she says shocks everyone. You won't want to miss the twist that turned everything upside down. Make sure to subscribe to our channel for more mind-blowing stories like this one, where unexpected moments change lives in an instant. Sarah, a seasoned 911 operator, sat at her desk in the dispatch center, her fingers dancing across the keyboard as she logged the details of her last call. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, marking the final minutes of her shift. She allowed herself a small yawn, already dreaming of the comfort of her bed and the promise of a good night's sleep. But fate had other plans for Sarah that night, plans that would push her skills to the limit and test her resolve in ways she never imagined. The harsh ring of an incoming emergency call shattered the relative quiet of the dispatch center. Sarah's training kicked in immediately, her tired eyes snapping to attention as she answered with practiced calm. 911, what's your emergency? For a moment, there was only silence on the other end of the line, broken by the sound of shallow, rapid breathing. Sarah's brow furrowed with concern. Years of experience had taught her that sometimes the most urgent calls began with silence. Hello? This is 911. Are you in a safe place to speak? Sarah prompted gently, her voice steady and reassuring. A small voice, trembling with fear, finally responded. I need help. Please. The words were barely above a whisper, but they carried a weight that Sarah felt in her very core. Okay, I'm here to help you. Can you tell me your name? Sarah asked, her fingers poised over the keyboard, ready to input any information she could glean. Amy, came the quiet reply. My name is Amy. Sarah nodded, even though Amy couldn't see her. All right, Amy, you're doing great. Can you tell me where you are? There was a pause, filled only by the sound of Amy's ragged breathing. When she spoke again, her voice was tinged with a mixture of fear and uncertainty. I'm at home, but something's wrong. I don't know what to do. Sarah's instincts, honed by years of handling crisis calls, kicked into high gear. There was something in Amy's voice, a note of desperation that set alarm bells ringing in Sarah's mind. This wasn't a typical call for help. There was an undercurrent of something deeper, more complex. Amy, listen to me carefully. Are you in immediate danger? Is there someone in the house who might hurt you? Sarah asked, her tone firm but gentle. No, it's not like that, Amy replied quickly. I'm alone, but I'm scared. Something's happened. Something bad. Sarah took a deep breath, centering herself. She knew that every word, every inflection in her voice could make a difference in a situation like this. Okay, Amy, I want you to know that you're not alone. I'm here with you, and we're going to figure this out together. Can you tell me more about what's happening? Amy's voice quavered as she spoke, the words tumbling out in a rush. It's my parents. They've been acting strange for weeks, whispering, arguing when they think I can't hear. And now they're gone. Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard, logging the details. Gone? When did you last see them, Amy? This morning, Amy replied, her voice catching. They said they were going on a trip, but something fell off. The way they looked at me, it was like they were saying goodbye. And now I can't reach them. Their phones are off, and I found things. The hairs on the back of Sarah's neck stood up. There was more to this story, layers of complexity that were only beginning to reveal themselves. What kind of things did you find, Amy? Amy's voice dropped even lower, as if she were afraid of being overheard, despite being alone in the home. Papers. Lots of papers. In a locked room in the basement that I've never seen before. I think my parents might be in trouble. Real trouble. Sarah's mind raced, processing the information and assessing the potential scenarios. This was no ordinary missing persons case. The mention of secret documents and hidden rooms painted a picture of something far more sinister. Amy, you've done the right thing by calling us, Sarah assured her. I'm going to dispatch officers to your location right away. Can you give me your address? As Amy recited her address, Sarah quickly relayed the information to the dispatch team. Within moments, she knew that officers were en route to the scene. But she also knew that her job was far from over. Amy was alone, frightened, and potentially in the middle of a dangerous situation. Sarah needed to keep her calm and gather as much information as possible before the police arrived. Amy, the police are on their way to you now. While we wait for them, I want you to stay on the line with me, okay? Can you tell me more about these papers you found? What did they say? Amy's voice trembled as she spoke. I didn't understand most of it. There were numbers, lots of numbers, and names I didn't recognize. But there was something else. She trailed off, her breath catching in her throat. It's okay, Amy. Take your time, Sarah encouraged, her own heart racing despite her outward calm. There was a letter, Amy continued after a moment. It was from my dad to my mom. He wrote about how sorry he was, how he never meant for things to go this far. He said they might have to leave to protect me. What does that mean? What have they done? Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of Amy's fear and confusion. In her years as a 911 operator, she had handled countless calls, but there was something about this one that struck a chord deep within her. Perhaps it was the vulnerability in Amy's voice, or the sense that this young girl's world was crumbling around her in ways she couldn't yet comprehend. Amy, I know this is scary and confusing, Sarah said, choosing her words carefully. But I want you to know that you're doing everything right. The police will be there soon, and they'll help us figure out what's going on. For now, I need you to focus on staying safe. Are all the doors and windows locked? Yes, Amy replied. I checked everything after I found the papers. I was afraid. I don't know what I was afraid of. That's good, Amy. You're being very brave, Sarah assured her. Now, I need you to find a safe place to wait for the police. Is there a room where you feel secure? Maybe with a strong door. My bedroom, Amy said after a moment's consideration. It has a lock on the door. Perfect. I want you to go there now. Okay. Take your phone with you and lock the door behind you. Can you do that for me? Sarah listened intently as she heard movement on the other end of the line, the soft sound of footsteps, and then the click of a lock engaging. I'm here, Amy said, her voice small but steady. I'm in my room. You're doing great, Amy, Sarah said, infusing her voice with as much warmth and reassurance as she could muster. Now, while we wait for the police, can you tell me a little more about your parents? What do they do for a living? There was a pause on the other end of the line, and Sarah could almost feel Amy's hesitation. My dad, he works in finance, I think. He's always talking about markets and investments. Mom used to be a teacher, but she stopped working a few years ago. They never really talk about work at home. Sarah nodded to herself, piecing together the fragments of information. The mention of finance, coupled with the mysterious documents and sudden disappearance, painted a troubling picture. But she knew better than to jump to conclusions or to voice her suspicions to Amy. All right, Amy. That's helpful information. The police will want to know essay details when they arrive. Now, I know this is difficult, but can you think of anything else unusual that's happened recently? Any strange visitors to the house, or changes in your parents' behavior? Amy was quiet for a long moment, and Sarah could hear her breathing, quick and shallow. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. There was a man, about a month ago. He came to the house late at night. I wasn't supposed to see him, but I heard voices and came downstairs. My dad was arguing with him in the study. When they saw me, they stopped talking, and my dad sent me back to bed. But the man, the way he looked at me, it was like he was memorizing my face. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine at Amy's words. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together, forming a picture that was as intriguing as it was alarming. Did you hear any of what they were saying, Amy? Or did you see the man again after that night? No, I didn't see him again, Amy replied. But I heard my dad say something about getting out and protecting the family. And the man, he said something like, you know what happens to people who try to leave? It scared me, but when I asked my parents about it the next day, they said I must have been dreaming. Sarah's mind raced, processing the information. It was clear that Amy's parents were involved in something far more complex and potentially dangerous than a simple business deal gone wrong. The mention of people trying to leave, the threat implied in the stranger's words, it all pointed to a situation that was rapidly escalating beyond a typical missing persons case. Just then, Sarah heard the distant wail of sirens through the phone. Amy, I think I can hear the police arriving. Can you hear them too? Yes, Amy said, her voice a mixture of relief and apprehension. I can hear them. What? What should I do now? Stay where you are for now, Amy, Sarah instructed. The officers will announce themselves when they arrive at the door. When they do, I want you to call out and let them know where you are. They'll guide you from there. Okay. Okay. Amy agreed, her voice small but determined. As they waited for the police to make contact, Sarah kept Amy talking, asking her about school, her friends, anything to keep her mind occupied and prevent her from spiraling into panic. With each passing moment, Sarah's admiration for the young girl grew. Despite the fear and uncertainty surrounding her, Amy remained remarkably composed, answering Sarah's questions with a clarity that belied her years. Finally, there was a loud knock at the door, followed by a strong, authoritative voice. Police, is anyone home? They're here, Amy whispered into the phone. Okay, Amy, remember what I said. Call out to them and let them know where you are. They're here to help you, Sarah reassured her. Sarah listened as Amy called out to the officers, her young voice carrying a tremor but remaining clear and audible. There was the sound of heavy footsteps, a brief exchange of words, and then Amy's relieved sob as she presumably came face to face with the officers. Amy, the officers are with you now, Sarah said gently. You've been so brave, and you've done everything right. I'm going to let you go now so you can talk to the police, okay? They'll take good care of you and help figure out what's going on with your parents. Wait, Amy said quickly. Sarah, thank you for everything. I was so scared, and you helped me feel less alone. Sarah felt a lump form in her throat, touched by the sincerity in Amy's voice. You're welcome, Amy. You're stronger than you know. Take care of yourself, and remember, if you ever need help again, we're always here. As Sarah ended the call, she sat back in her chair, her mind whirling with the details of what had just transpired. In all her years as a 911 operator, she had rarely encountered a situation quite like this one. There was a mystery here, a web of secrets and dangers that centered around a young girl and her missing parents. Sarah knew that her part in this drama was over, at least for now. The police would take over from here, investigating the disappearance, unraveling the clues hidden in those mysterious documents, and hopefully bringing Amy's parents home safely. But as she logged the final details of the call and prepared to hand over to the next shift, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a much larger story. As she gathered her things to leave, Sarah's gaze fell on the clock. Her shift had ended over an hour ago, but the time had flown by, consumed by the intensity of Amy's call. She walked out of the dispatch center into the cool night air, her mind still filled with thoughts of the brave young girl and the uncertain fate of her parents. Little did Sarah know that the events set in motion by that single phone call would continue to unfold, touching lives far beyond the small town where it all began. The story of Amy and her parents was far from over, and in the days and weeks to come, it would reveal a tale of courage, betrayal, and the unbreakable bonds of family that would captivate the nation and change lives forever. As the police cruiser pulled up to Amy's house, officers Jake Martinez and Lisa Chun exchanged grim looks. They had responded to countless domestic calls over the years, but something about this one felt different. The dispatcher's notes painted a picture of a situation far more complex than a typical family dispute. Remember, we're dealing with a minor here, Jake reminded his partner as they approached the front door. Let's tread carefully. Lisa nodded, her hand resting instinctively on her holstered weapon. Got it. I'll take point on talking to the girl. Jake rapped his knuckles firmly against the solid oak door. Police! Is anyone home? He called out, his voice carrying the authority of his badge. For a moment, there was silence. Then, faintly, they heard a young voice call out from within the house. I'm up here, in my bedroom. The officers shared a quick glance before Jake tried the door handle. To their surprise, it was unlocked. They entered cautiously, sweeping their flashlights across the dimly lit interior. The house was immaculate, almost eerily so. Family photos lined the walls, showcasing smiling faces and happy memories. But there was an underlying tension in the air, a sense that something was deeply amiss. "Amy," Lisa called out, her voice gentle but firm. "It's the police. Can you come down and talk to us?" They heard movement from upstairs, and moments later, a young girl appeared at the top of the staircase. Amy looked to be about 14 or 15, with long brown hair and wide, frightened eyes. She descended the stairs slowly, her gaze darting between the two officers. "Are you Amy?" Lisa asked, offering a reassuring smile. When the girl nodded, Lisa continued, "I'm Officer Chun, and this is my partner, Officer Martinez. We're here to help. Can you tell us what's going on?" Amy wrapped her arms around herself, looking small and vulnerable in the large, empty house. "It's my parents," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're gone, and I think they might be in trouble." Jake's eyes narrowed slightly. "Gone? When did you last see them, Amy?" "This morning," Amy replied, her voice gaining strength as she spoke. "They said they were going on a trip, but something felt wrong. And then I found things." Lisa crouched down slightly, bringing herself to eye level with Amy. "What kind of things did you find, sweetie?" Amy hesitated, glancing around as if afraid of being overheard. "Papers. Lots of papers with numbers and names I don't recognize. And a letter. From my dad to my mom. He wrote about having to leave to protect me. I don't understand what's happening." Jake and Lisa exchanged a meaningful look. This was quickly shaping up to be far more than a simple missing person's case. "Amy, you've been very brave," Lisa said softly. "We're going to do everything we can to figure out what's going on and find your parents. But first, we need to make sure you're safe. Is there someone you can stay with? A relative or a close family friend?" Amy shook her head slowly, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "No, there's no one. We don't have any family nearby, and my parents, they've always been kind of private. We don't really have close friends." Jake frowned, concern etching lines across his forehead. The isolation of this family was becoming more apparent, and it only added to the mystery surrounding the situation. "All right, Amy," Lisa said, her voice gentle but firm. "For now, we're going to need to take a look around the house. Is that okay with you?" Amy nodded, wrapping her arms tighter around herself. "The papers I found, they're in my dad's study, and there's a locked room in the basement that I've never seen before." Jake's eyebrows shot up at this information. A hidden room was never a good sign in cases like these. "Can you show us where these are, Amy?" As Amy led them through the house, the officers couldn't help but notice the stark contrast between the perfectly manicured exterior of the home and the tension that seemed to permeate every room. Family photos smiled down from the walls, but there was something almost artificial about the perfection they portrayed. The study was a large, well-appointed room lined with bookshelves. A heavy wooden desk dominated the center, its surface clear except for a single laptop. Amy pointed to a drawer. "The papers are in there," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jake pulled on a pair of latex gloves and carefully opened the drawer. Inside, he found a stack of documents, just as Amy had described. His eyes widened as he began to leaf through them. "Lisa," he called softly, "you're going to want to see this." As Lisa joined him at the desk, Amy hovered nervously in the doorway. The officers exchanged grim looks as they scanned the documents. "Amy," Lisa said, turning to the young girl, "these papers, they're pretty complicated. We're going to need some time to go through them properly. Can you show us the basement now?" Amy nodded, leading them down a narrow staircase to the basement. The air grew cooler as they descended, and Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something far bigger than they had initially anticipated. The basement was finished with plush carpeting and warm lighting that belied the chill in the air. Amy pointed to a door at the far end of the room. "That's the one," she said. "I've never seen it open before." Jake approached the door cautiously, testing the handle. As expected, it was locked. He examined the lock closely, then turned to his partner. "It's a high-security lock," he murmured. "Not something you'd typically find in a residential basement." Lisa nodded, her expression grave. "We're going to need a warrant to open this," she said. Then, turning to Amy, she added in a gentler tone, "Sweetie, we're going to have to ask you some more questions. But first, let's go back upstairs where it's more comfortable." As they made their way back to the living room, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they had just scratched the surface of something much larger and potentially dangerous. The mysterious documents, the hidden room, the sudden disappearance of Amy's parents. It all pointed to a situation that was rapidly escalating beyond their initial expectations. Once they were settled in the living room, Lisa sat next to Amy on the couch while Jake remained standing, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. "Amy," Lisa began gently, "I know this is difficult, but we need you to think carefully. Has anything unusual happened recently? Any strange visitors or phone calls?" Amy's brow furrowed as she thought. "Well, there was—" She hesitated, then continued, "About a month ago, here was a man who came to the house late at night. I wasn't supposed to see him, but I heard voices and came downstairs." Jake leaned in, his interest piqued. "Can you describe this man, Amy?" "He was tall," Amy said, her eyes distant as she recalled the memory. "He wore a dark suit, and he had a scar on his left cheek. I remember because when he saw me, he smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. It was scary." Lisa nodded encouragingly. "That's very helpful, Amy. Did you hear anything they were saying?" Amy's voice dropped to a whisper. "I heard my dad say something about getting out and protecting the family. And the man, he said something like, 'You know what happens to people who try to leave.' It scared me, but when I asked my parents about it the next day, they said I must have been dreaming." Jake and Lisa exchanged a look of concern. The situation was becoming clearer, and it painted a troubling picture. "Amy," Jake said, his voice kind but serious, "I know this is a lot to take in, but based on what you've told us and what we've seen, we believe your parents might be involved in something complicated. We're going to do everything we can to find them and make sure you're safe, but we need your help." Amy nodded, her young face set with determination despite the fear in her eyes. "What do you need me to do?" Lisa smiled reassuringly. "For now, we need you to come with us. We'll take you somewhere safe while we investigate further. Is there anything you need to grab? Some clothes, maybe?" As Amy went upstairs to pack a small bag, Jake pulled Lisa aside. "This is bigger than we thought," he murmured. "Those documents in the study, they look like financial records, but there's something off about them. And that locked room in the basement." Lisa nodded grimly. "I know. We need to get Amy to a safe location and then come back with a full team. Whatever her parents are involved in, it's clear they were trying to protect her from it." When Amy returned with a small duffel bag, her face was pale but resolute. "I'm ready," she said quietly. As they led Amy out to the patrol car, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a much larger and more dangerous situation. The quiet suburban street seemed to hold its breath as they drove away, leaving behind a house full of secrets and a mystery that was only beginning to unravel. Little did they know that their actions that night would set in motion a chain of events that would reach far beyond their small town, touching lives across the country and uncovering a web of deceit and danger that had been years in the making. As the patrol car pulled away from Amy's house, its red and blue lights cutting through the darkness of the quiet suburban street, Officer Jake Martinez couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled in his gut. He glanced in the rearview mirror at Amy, who sat silently in the back seat, her small frame dwarfed by the vastness of the vehicle. "You doing okay back there, Amy?" he asked, his voice gentle. Amy nodded, her eyes fixed on the passing scenery. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Officer Lisa Chun turned in her seat to face Amy. "We're taking you to a safe place," she explained. "It's a special facility where we can make sure you're protected while we investigate what's happening with your parents." As they drove through the night, the streets gradually became busier, the quiet residential areas giving way to the more active parts of town. Amy watched as neon signs and street lights blurred past the window, each one a beacon in the darkness, reminding her of how far she was traveling from everything familiar. Jake's mind raced as he drove, piecing together the fragments of information they had gathered. The mysterious documents, the hidden room, the late-night visitor with the chilling warning. It all pointed to something far more sinister than a simple missing persons case. He had a sinking feeling that Amy's parents were caught up in something dangerous, something that had forced them to make the heartbreaking decision to leave their daughter behind. After about 30 minutes of driving, they pulled up to a nondescript building on the outskirts of town. To the casual observer, it might have looked like any other office building, but Jake and Lisa knew better. This was a secure facility used by law enforcement for protective custody cases. As they led Amy inside, they were greeted by a stern-faced woman in a crisp suit. "I'm Agent Sarah Reeves," she introduced herself, her voice businesslike but not unkind. "I'll be overseeing Amy's protection while you conduct your investigation." Amy looked up at the agent, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and curiosity. "How long do I have to stay here?" she asked. Agent Reeves crouched down to Amy's eye level, her expression softening. "I know this is scary, Amy," she said gently, "but we need to keep you safe while we figure out what's going on with your parents. We'll make sure you're comfortable, and Officers Martinez and Chun will keep you updated on their investigation." As Jake and Lisa prepared to leave, Amy suddenly reached out and grabbed Lisa's hand. "You'll find them, right?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You'll bring them back?" Lisa squeezed Amy's hand reassuringly. "We're going to do everything we can, Amy. I promise." As they walked back to their patrol car, Jake and Lisa exchanged grim looks. They both knew that this case was far from ordinary, and the promises they had made to Amy weighed heavily on their shoulders. "Where do we start?" Lisa asked as they got back in the car. Jake's jaw set with determination. "We go back to the house," he said. "We need a full forensics team to go over every inch of that place, especially that locked room in the basement. And we need to start digging into Amy's parents' background. Something tells me there's a lot more to their story than meets the eye." As they drove back to Amy's house, now eerily dark and empty, neither of them could have imagined the web of deceit and danger they were about to uncover. The disappearance of Amy's parents was just the tip of the iceberg, and as they would soon discover, the ripples from this case would spread far beyond their small town, touching lives and uncovering secrets that had been buried for years. The next morning dawned gray and overcast, matching the somber mood that had settled over the police station. Jake and Lisa had been up most of the night, coordinating with the forensics team and beginning the painstaking process of piecing together the mystery surrounding Amy's parents. As they stood in front of the evidence board, cups of strong coffee in hand, the scale of what they were dealing with began to sink in. Photos of Amy's house were pinned up, along with copies of the mysterious documents they had found in the study. A timeline of events was starting to take shape, but there were still far more questions than answers. "What have we got?" Captain Reeves asked as he strode into the room, his face creased with concern. The disappearance of 2 citizens and the involvement of a minor had kicked this case up to high priority. Jake ran a hand through his hair, exhaustion evident in every line of his face. "It's complicated, sir," he began. The parents, Michael and Emily Thompson, seemed to have been living a double life. On the surface, they were the perfect suburban family. Michael worked in finance, Emily was a former teacher. They were involved in the community, donated to local charities. But underneath, he gestured to the documents pinned to the board. These financial records show transactions that don't add up. Large sums of money moving through offshore accounts, coded references to what we suspect might be illegal activities. Lisa picked up the thread, and then there's the locked room in the basement. Forensics is still working on getting it open, but the lock is military grade, not something you'd find in your average family home. Captain Reeves frowned, his eyes scanning the evidence board. "Any leads on where they might have gone?" Jake shook his head. "Their cell phones are off, and their car is still in the garage. It's like they vanished into thin air." "But," he hesitated, then continued, "Amy mentioned a man who visited the house about a month ago. Tall, scar on his left cheek. She overheard him making what sounded like a threat. We've got a sketch artist working with Amy to get a composite," Lisa added. "But sir, there's something else. When we ran Michael and Emily's names through the database, we got a flag. Their identities, they might not be real." Captain Reeves' eyebrows shot up. "What are you saying, Chin?" Lisa took a deep breath. "We think Michael and Emily Thompson might be living under assumed identities. The records only go back about 15 years, right around the time Amy was born. Before that, it's like they didn't exist." A heavy silence fell over the room as the implications of this revelation sank in. Captain Reeves was the first to break it. "Witness protection," he suggested. Jake shook his head. "We've reached out to the Marshal Service. If it is witness protection, it's not on the books." Captain Reeves rubbed his temples. feeling the beginnings of a headache coming on. "All right," he said finally. "This is clearly bigger than we initially thought. I want you two to keep digging. Follow every lead, no matter how small. And keep a close eye on Amy. If her parents are involved in something dangerous, she could be at risk too." As Jake and Lisa nodded their understanding, a young officer burst into the room, his face flushed with excitement. "Sirs," he said, slightly out of breath, "we've got something. The forensics team just got that locked room open." The drive back to Amy's house was tense, the air thick with anticipation. As they pulled up to the curb, Jake and Lisa could see the flurry of activity around the property. The quiet suburban street had been transformed into a hive of police activity, with forensics vans and uniformed officers swarming the area. They made their way quickly to the basement, where a group of technicians in white suits were clustered around the now open door. As Jake and Lisa approached, the lead forensics officer turned to greet them, his expression a mixture of excitement and concern. "Officers," he said, nodding in greeting, "you're going to want to see this." As they stepped into the room, Jake and Lisa felt as though they had crossed a threshold into another world. The small space was crammed with high-tech equipment, computers, servers, and devices they couldn't even begin to identify. One wall was covered in monitors, each displaying scrolling lines of code or surveillance footage from unknown locations. "What is all this?" Lisa breathed, her eyes wide as she took in the scene. The forensics officer shook his head in amazement. "It's like something out of a spy movie," he said. "We've got top-of-the-line encryption software, communication devices that operate on frequencies not used by any known agency, and—" He paused, leading them to a safe in the corner of the room. The safe stood open, revealing stacks of cash in various currencies, passports from multiple countries, and a set of documents that made Jake's blood run cold. "Are those what I think they are?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The forensics officer nodded grimly. "Classified government documents. High-level stuff. We're talking national security here." Lisa turned to Jake, her face pale. "What have we stumbled into?" she asked. Before Jake could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and felt his heart skip a beat. It was a message from the safe house where they had left Amy. "We need to go," he said urgently. "Now." As they raced back to their car, Jake filled Lisa in. "Something's happened at the safe house. They're moving Amy to a more secure location." Lisa's eyes widened in alarm. "You don't think?" Jake nodded grimly. "Whatever Amy's parents are involved in, it's caught up to her. And I have a feeling this is just the beginning." As they sped through the streets, sirens blaring, both officers knew that they were now part of something much bigger than they had ever anticipated. The disappearance of Amy's parents was no longer just a missing persons case. It was the thread that, when pulled, threatened to unravel a conspiracy that reached to the highest levels of power. And somewhere out there, Michael and Emily Thompson were running for their lives, carrying secrets that could change everything. The race was on to find them before those who wanted to silence them did, and to uncover the truth behind the web of lies that had ensnared an innocent family. Little did Jake and Lisa know that their investigation was about to take them on a journey across the country, into the shadowy world of international espionage, corporate corruption, and government secrets. The clock was ticking, and with each passing moment, the danger to Amy and her parents grew. As they arrived at the safe house, Jake and Lisa were met with a scene of controlled chaos. Police vehicles and unmarked cars filled the street, their lights painting the pre-dawn sky in flashes of red and blue. Agent Reeves strode towards them, her face a mask of professional concern. "What happened?" Jake demanded as they approached Agent Reeves, his voice tight with worry. Agent Reeves' face was grim as she replied, "We had a security breach. Someone tried to hack into our systems about an hour ago. They were specifically targeting information about Amy." Lisa's eyes widened in alarm. "Is she okay?" "She's fine," Agent Reeves assured them quickly. "We detected the breach early and shut it down. But it's clear that whoever is after Amy's parents knows she's under our protection. We can't take any chances." Jake nodded, his jaw set with determination. "Where are you taking her?" "I can't disclose the exact location," Agent Reeves said, her voice low. "But it's a high-security facility outside the state. She'll be safe there while we continue the investigation. As if on cue, the front door of the safe house opened, and two agents emerged, flanking a small figure that could only be Amy. Even from a distance, Jake could see the fear and confusion on her young face. Without thinking, he started towards her, Lisa close on his heels. As they approached, Amy looked up, her eyes lighting with recognition. "Officer Martinez." "Officer Chun," she called out, her voice a mixture of relief and anxiety. Jake crouched down to her eye level, offering what he hoped was a reassuring smile. "Hey there, Amy. How are you holding up?" Amy's lower lip trembled slightly, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "I'm scared," she admitted, "but I'm trying to be brave. Have you found anything about my parents?" Jake and Lisa exchanged a quick glance. They had agreed earlier not to burden Amy with the full extent of what they had discovered, at least not yet. "We're still looking, Amy," Lisa said gently, "but we've found some clues that we think will help us find them. We're not giving up?" "Okay." Amy nodded, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Where are they taking me now?" "Somewhere very safe," Jake assured her. "These agents are going to take good care of you while we keep working on finding your mom and dad." As Amy was led towards a waiting SUV with tinted windows, she suddenly turned back. "Officer Martinez?" she called out. "Yes, Amy. When you find my parents, can you tell them I love them and that I'm not mad at them for leaving? I just want them to come home." Jake felt a lump form in his throat. "I promise, Amy. We'll tell them." As the SUV pulled away, disappearing into the early morning traffic, Jake and Lisa stood in silence for a moment, the weight of their responsibility settling heavily on their shoulders. Finally, Lisa spoke. "So, what now?" Jake's expression hardened with resolve. "Now we dig deeper. Whatever Amy's parents are involved in, it's big enough to have people hacking into secure police networks. We need to find out who's behind this, and fast." As they walked back to their car, Jake's mind was racing. The hidden room in the basement, the classified documents, the attempted hack, it all pointed to something far beyond a simple case of parents running from trouble. This was starting to feel like the tip of a very large, very dangerous iceberg. "I think it's time we brought in some help," Jake said as they got into the car. "This is way beyond our usual jurisdiction. We need to contact the FBI." Lisa nodded in agreement. "I was thinking the same thing. But Jake..." She hesitated, then continued. "What if the FBI is already involved? What if they're part of whatever Amy's parents are running from?" Jake's hands tightened on the steering wheel. The thought had crossed his mind too. In a case like this, with classified documents and high-tech surveillance equipment involved, it was hard to know who to trust. "We'll have to be careful," he said finally. "We'll reach out to my old academy buddy, Alex. He's with the FBI now, but I'd trust him with my life. If there's anyone who can help us navigate this safely, it's him." As they drove back to the station, the sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold. It was the dawn of a new day, but for Jake and Lisa, it felt like the beginning of something much bigger. A journey that would take them into the heart of a conspiracy that threatened not just Amy and her parents, but potentially national security itself. Little did they know that their decision to reach out to the FBI would set in motion a chain of events that would shake the foundations of their trust, test their resolve, and push them to their limits. The race to uncover the truth about Amy's parents was about to become a high-stakes game of cat and mouse, with players they had yet to identify and dangers they could scarcely imagine. As they pulled into the station parking lot, Jake's phone buzzed with an incoming text. It was from an unknown number, but the message made his blood run cold. "Stop digging. You have no idea what you're getting into. For your own safety and Amy's, walk away now." Jake showed the message to Lisa, their eyes meeting in a moment of silent communication. They both knew that walking away was not an option. Whatever the cost, whatever the danger, they were committed to seeing this through for Amy, for her parents, and for the truth that lay hidden beneath layers of secrecy and deception. The quiet of the early morning was shattered by the bustling activity inside the police station. Jake and Lisa strode purposefully through the corridors, the urgency of their mission evident in every step. They found Captain Reeves in the conference room, surrounded by stacks of files and a team of bleary-eyed officers who had been working through the night. Martinez Chun. The captain greeted them, his voice gravelly from lack of sleep. What's the situation with the girl? Jake quickly briefed him on Amy's relocation and the attempted hack on the safe house's systems. The captain's frown deepened with each new piece of information. And there's this, Jake added, showing him the threatening text message he had received. Captain Reeves studied the message, his expression grim. This case is escalating faster than we anticipated. Have you made that call to your FBI contact yet, Martinez? Jake shook his head. Not yet, sir. I wanted to update you first and get your approval. The captain nodded. Do it, but keep it off the books for now. Until we know more, we can't risk word getting out through official channels. As Jake stepped out to make the call, Lisa turned to the evidence board, her eyes scanning the complex W.E.B. of information they had gathered so far. Something was nagging at her, a connection she felt was just out of reach. Sir, she said suddenly, I think we need to look deeper into Michael Thompson's work history. The financial firm he supposedly worked for. Has anyone actually verified his employment there? The captain's eyebrows rose. Good thinking, Chun. Get on it. Lisa nodded and immediately set to work, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she dug into databases and made discreet phone calls. Meanwhile, in a quiet corner of the station, Jake was having an intense conversation with his old friend, FBI agent Alex Reeves. Alex, I wouldn't be calling if it wasn't serious, Jake said in a low voice. This goes way beyond a missing persons case. We're talking classified documents, high-tech surveillance equipment, and possible witness protection gone wrong. There was a pause on the other end of the line before Alex responded. Jake, what you're describing, it sounds like it could be connected to something we've been investigating for months. A shadow organization with ties to both the government and major corporations. We've been calling it Project Eclipse. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. What do you know about it? Not enough, Alex admitted. But if your missing parents are involved, it could be the break we've been looking for. Listen, Jake, I can't stress enough how dangerous this is. If even half of what we suspect about Project Eclipse is true, you and your partner are in way over your heads. Jake's jaw set with determination. We can't walk away, Alex. There's a young girl caught in the middle of this. We promised we'd find her parents. Alex sighed heavily. I know that tone, Jake. You always were too stubborn for your own good. All right, here's what we'll do. I'm coming to you. I can be there by tonight. In the meantime, be careful. Trust no one outside your immediate team. And Jake, watch your back. If Project Eclipse is involved, they've got eyes and ears everywhere. As Jake ended the call and walked back to the conference room, he felt the weight of the situation settling heavily on his shoulders. The case had just expanded far beyond anything he had imagined, and he knew that from this moment on, every move they made could have life-or-death consequences. He found Lisa bent over her computer, her face lit by the glow of the screen. Jake, she said as he approached, her voice tight with excitement and apprehension, you need to see this. Jake leaned in, his eyes widening as he took in the information on the screen. Is this verified? Lisa nodded grimly. Triple-checked. Michael Thompson's employment history is a complete fabrication. The financial firm he supposedly worked for? It's a shell company. And guess who's behind it? She pulled up another screen, showing a complex web of corporate structures. At the center was a name that made Jake's blood run cold. Eclipse Industries. Project Eclipse. Jake murmured, the pieces starting to fall into place. Lisa looked up at him, her eyes questioning. What do you know, Jake? He quickly filled her in on his conversation with Alex, watching as understanding dawned on her face. So we're not just dealing with missing parents or even ordinary criminals, she said slowly. We're up against a shadow organization with ties to the government and major corporations. Jake nodded, his expression serious. And they're willing to go to great lengths to keep their secrets. Lisa, I need to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before you answer. This case is going to get dangerous. More dangerous than anything we've faced before. If you want to step back, I'd understand. Lisa's eyes flashed with determination. Not a chance, partner. We're in this together. For Amy, for her parents, and for the truth. Jake felt a surge of gratitude and admiration for his partner. He knew they were stepping into treacherous waters, but having Lisa by his side made him feel like they stood a fighting chance. "All right," he said, his voice low and intense. "Let's bring the captain up to speed. We've got until tonight to gather as much information as we can. When Alex arrives, we need to be ready to move fast." As they turned to brief Captain Reeves, neither of them noticed the cleaning lady who had been slowly working her way closer to their conversation. She kept her head down, seemingly focused on her task, but her ears had caught every word. As Jake and Lisa walked away, she slipped a hand into her pocket, fingers brushing against a small, high-tech communication device. In a nondescript office building hundreds of miles away, a man with a scar on his left cheek received a message. He read it quickly, his face impassive, then turned to the group of stern-faced individuals gathered around a large conference table. "It seems," he said, his voice cold and calculating, "that we have a situation in need of our immediate attention." The pieces were set, the players were moving into position, and the true scope of the conspiracy surrounding Amy and her parents was about to be revealed. For Jake and Lisa, the next 24 hours would test their skills, their loyalty, and their very survival in ways they could never have imagined. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows across the bustling police station, Jake and Lisa huddled with Captain Reeves in his office. The blinds were drawn, creating a cocoon of privacy in the midst of the department's frenetic activity. "Let me get this straight," Captain Reeves said, his voice low and intense. "We're not just dealing with missing parents or even organized crime. We're talking about a shadow organization with tentacles reaching into the government and major corporations." Jake nodded grimly. "That's what it looks like, sir. My FBI contact referred to it as Project Eclipse, and the shell company behind Michael Thompson's fake employment is linked to something called Eclipse Industries." The captain leaned back in his chair, running a hand over his face. "This is way beyond our jurisdiction, way beyond anything we're equipped to handle." "With all due respect, sir," Lisa interjected, her voice firm, "we're already involved. They try to hack our systems to get to Amy. They know we're onto something. If we back off now, we're leaving that girl vulnerable and letting whoever is behind this continue operating in the shadows." Captain Reeves studied them both for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he let out a heavy sigh. "You're right, of course, but from this moment on, we operate with extreme caution. This stays between the three of us and your FBI contact, Martinez. No one else in the department can know the full scope of what we're dealing with." "Understood?" Jake and Lisa nodded in unison, the gravity of the situation settling over them like a heavy cloak. "Good," the captain continued. "Now, what's our next move?" Jake leaned forward, his voice low and intense. "We need to dig deeper into Eclipse Industries. If we can unravel their corporate structure, maybe we can find a link to Amy's parents or figure out what they were involved in." Lisa nodded in agreement. "I've got some contacts in the financial crimes unit. I can reach out discreetly, see if they've come across anything related to Eclipse in their investigations." "Do it," Captain Reeves said. "But be careful. Use secure channels only. And Martinez, when is your FBI friend arriving?" "Tonight," Jake replied. "He said he'd contact me with the details once he's in town." The captain nodded. "All right. Until then, you two keep digging. But watch your backs. If this organization is as powerful and far-reaching as we suspect, they could have eyes and ears anywhere." As Jake and Lisa left the captain's office, they were both acutely aware of the weight of responsibility on their shoulders. They had stumbled onto something far bigger than they could have imagined, and the stakes were higher than ever. "I'll start on Eclipse Industries," Jake said as they reached their desks. "See if I can trace their corporate structure, find any connections to known criminal enterprises or government contracts." Lisa nodded. "I'll reach out to my contacts and then dive into the financial records we found in the Thompsons' house. There might be clues there that we missed on the first pass." As they settled into their tasks, the bustling noise of the police station faded into the background. Hours slipped by unnoticed as they delved deeper into the mystery surrounding Amy's parents and the shadowy Project Eclipse. It was late afternoon when Lisa suddenly sat up straight, her eyes wide with excitement. "Jake," she called out, her voice urgent. "I think I found something." Jake was at her side in an instant, leaning over her shoulder to look at her computer screen. "What is it?" "Look at this," Lisa said, pointing to a series of transactions in the financial records. "These transfers, they're coded, but I think I've cracked the pattern. They're not just moving money, they're moving information." Jake's brow furrowed as he studied the screen. "What kind of information?" "I'm not sure yet," Lisa admitted. "But whatever it is, it's valuable enough that they've gone to extreme lengths to hide it. And look at the dates. The last transfer was just 2 days before the Thompsons disappeared." Jake felt a surge of adrenaline. This could be the break they needed. "Can you trace where the information was sent?" Lisa shook her head. "Not yet. The trail goes cold after it passes through a series of offshore accounts. But," she paused, her fingers flying over the keyboard, "there's something else. A recurring code in the transfers." "Nightshade. Nightshade?" Jake repeated, the word sending a chill down his spine. Could be a project name, or maybe a person. Before they could discuss it further, Jake's phone buzzed with an incoming text. It was from Alex, his FBI contact. "In town. Meet me at the old railway station. 1 hour. Come alone." Jake showed the message to Lisa, his expression torn between excitement and apprehension. "You can't go alone," Lisa said immediately, her voice laced with concern. "It's not safe." Jake nodded in agreement. "I know, but we can't risk spooking Alex. He might have crucial information." He paused, thinking quickly. "Here's what we'll do. I'll go to the meeting point. You follow at a distance. Keep an eye out for anything suspicious. If something feels off, we abort immediately." Lisa didn't look happy about the plan, but she nodded reluctantly. "All right, but Jake, be careful. We don't know who we can trust anymore. Even your old friend Alex. We have to consider the possibility that he might be compromised." Jake's jaw tightened at the suggestion, but he knew Lisa was right. In a case this big, with stakes this high, they couldn't afford to take anything for granted. "I'll be on my guard," he assured her. "Let's go over the signal again. If anything feels off." 3 quick clicks on the radio, Lisa finished. "I'll be listening." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the city, Jake made his way to the old railway station. The once bustling transit hub now stood as a silent sentinel to a bygone era, its grand architecture slowly crumbling under the weight of neglect and time. Jake's footsteps echoed in the cavernous main hall as he entered, his senses on high alert. Every shadow seemed to hold potential danger, every distant sound a possible threat. He made his way to the agreed-upon meeting spot, an old waiting area near the back of the station. As he rounded a corner, he saw a familiar figure standing near a bank of dusty old lockers. "Alex," he called out softly. The man turned, and Jake felt a mixture of relief and apprehension wash over him. It was indeed Alex, but there was something different about him. His old friend looked haggard, with RK circles under his eyes and a tenseness to his posture that Jake had never seen before. "Jake," Alex replied, his voice low and urgent. "Thanks for coming. We don't have much time." Jake approached cautiously, his police instincts on high alert. "What's going on, Alex? What have you found out about Project Eclipse?" Alex glanced around nervously before responding. "It's worse than we thought, Jake. Much worse. Project Eclipse isn't just some shadowy corporate entity. It's a massive conspiracy involving top government officials, multinational corporations, and some of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the world." Jake felt his heart rate quicken. "And the Thompsons? How do they fit into all this?" Alex ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration and fear. "Michael and Emily Thompson aren't their real names. They were deep cover operatives working to gather evidence on Project Eclipse. But something went wrong. They discovered something so big, so dangerous that they had to run." "What did they find?" Jake pressed. Alex opened his mouth to respond, but before he could speak, a sharp crack echoed through the station. Jake's police training kicked in instantly. "Gunshot!" he yelled, grabbing Alex and pulling him down behind a nearby pillar. More shots rang out, the sound reverberating off the station's high ceilings. Jake reached for his service weapon, his heart pounding in his chest. "How many?" he shouted to Alex over the din. "I don't know," Alex called back, his own gun now in hand. "At least 2. Maybe more." "Jake, listen to me. If anything happens, you need to find the Nightshade files. They're the key to everything. Before Jake could ask what he meant, a bullet splintered the edge of the pillar they were hiding behind. Acting on instinct, Jake peeked out and returned fire, hearing a cry of pain in response. "We need to move," he yelled to Alex. "There's a service tunnel on the left. On three, we make a run for it. Ready?" Alex nodded grimly. 1, 2, 3. They burst from behind the pillar, running in a crouch towards the service tunnel. Bullets whizzed past them, uncomfortably close. Just as they reached the tunnel entrance, Jake heard Alex grunt in pain. "Alex," he cried, turning to see his friend stumble, a dark stain spreading across his shirt. "Go!" Alex gasped, pushing Jake towards the tunnel. "Find Nightshade. It's the only way to stop them." Jake hesitated for a split second, torn between helping his friend and following his instructions. But another hail of bullets made the decision for him. With a last agonized look at Alex, Jake plunged into the darkness of the service tunnel. He ran blindly, his breath coming in ragged gasps, the sound of pursuit close behind him. His mind raced, trying to process what had just happened. Alex was shot, possibly dead, and whoever was after them knew about their meeting. The implications were terrifying. After what felt like an eternity, Jake emerged from the other end of the tunnel, finding himself in a maze of back alleys. He could hear sirens in the distance. Lisa must have called for backup when she heard the gunshots. Jake quickly tapped his radio 3 times, praying that Lisa would understand the signal. He needed to disappear, to regroup and figure out his next move. Alex's last words echoed in his mind: "Find Nightshade." As he melted into the shadows of the city, Jake's mind whirled with questions. What were the Nightshade files? How were they connected to Amy's parents and Project Eclipse? And most pressingly, who could he trust now? One thing was clear: the stakes had just gotten much higher, and the danger was more real than ever. Jake knew that he and Lisa were now in the crosshairs of a powerful and ruthless organization. Their only hope was to uncover the truth before it was too late. Miles away, in a high-security facility, Amy sat alone in a sterile room, unaware of the chaos unfolding around her case. She clutched a photo of our parents, her young face etched with worry and confusion. Little did she know that she was at the center of a conspiracy that threatened to shake the very foundations of power in the country. As night fell over the city, the pieces of a complex puzzle began to move. In boardrooms and back alleys, in government offices and hidden bunkers, forces were mobilizing. The race to find the Nightshade files had begun, and the fate of Amy, her parents, and perhaps the entire nation hung in the balance. Jake's heart pounded in his chest as he navigated the labyrinth of back alleys, every shadow a potential threat. The distant wail of sirens grew louder, then faded again as he put more distance between himself and the old railway station. His mind raced, replaying the events of the past hour in a frantic loop. Alex was shot. Their meeting was compromised. Someone knew they were investigating Project Eclipse, and they were willing to kill to keep their secrets. As he ducked into a dimly lit side street, Jake felt his phone vibrate in his pocket. He pulled it out cautiously, relief washing over him as he saw Lisa's name on the screen. "Jake!" Lisa's voice was tense with worry. "Are you okay? What happened?" "It was a trap," Jake said, his voice low and urgent. "Alex is down. Maybe dead. We were ambushed." He heard Lisa's sharp intake of breath. "Oh my God! Jake, where are you? I'll come get you." "No," Jake said firmly. "It's not safe. They could be tracking us." "Listen, Lisa, I need you to do something for me. It's important." "Anything," Lisa replied without hesitation. "I need you to look into something called Nightshade." Alex mentioned it just before everything went sideways. He said it was the key to everything. There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Nightshade," Lisa repeated slowly. "Jake, that's the code I found in the Thompsons' financial records, remember?" Jake felt a jolt of excitement despite the dire circumstances. "You're right. It can't be a coincidence. Lisa, I think whatever Nightshade is, it's at the center of this whole conspiracy." "Okay," Lisa said, her voice taking on the focused tone Jake recognized from their toughest cases. "I'll dig into it. But Jake, what about you? Where will you go?" Jake glanced around, making sure he wasn't being followed. I can't go back to my place. It's not safe. I'll find somewhere to lay low for a while. We need to be careful about communicating. Use the secure channel we set up for emergencies. Got it, Lisa replied. Jake, be careful. We're in way over our heads here. You too, partner, Jake said softly. Watch your back. I'll be in touch. As he ended the call, Jake felt a mix of emotions washing over him. Fear, certainly. He was now a target of a powerful and ruthless organization, but also determination. They had stumbled onto something big, something that powerful people were willing to kill to keep secret. And somewhere out there, Amy's parents were on the run, carrying secrets that could blow this whole thing wide open. Jake made his way through the city, sticking to back streets and avoiding cameras. He had a safe house set up for emergencies, a small apartment rented under a false name. It wasn't much, but it would do for now. As he finally closed the door of the safe house behind him, Jake allowed himself a moment to breathe. He was safe for now, but he knew this was just the beginning. Whoever was behind Project Eclipse would be coming for him, for Lisa, for Amy. They needed to unravel this mystery and fast. Jake's thoughts turned to Amy, the young girl at the center of this storm. Was she truly safe in protective custody? Or had Project Eclipse's tendrils reached even there? He made a mental note to check on her status as soon as it was safe to do so. As exhaustion began to set in, Jake's mind whirled with questions. What were the Nightshade files? How were Amy's parents involved? And most pressingly, who could they trust? One thing was clear. The game had changed. They were no longer just investigating a missing persons case. They were up against a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of power. And they were running out of time. As Jake settled in for a restless night, he knew that tomorrow would bring new dangers and new challenges. But it might also bring them closer to the truth. And for Amy's sake, for the sake of her parents, and for the sake of justice, they had to keep pushing forward. Miles away, in her secure facility, Amy tossed and turned in her bed, unaware of the dangers swirling around her. In her dreams, she saw her parents reaching out to her, but always just out of reach. And behind them, a shadow loomed, growing larger and darker with each passing moment. The pieces were in motion. The stakes were set. And as a new day dawned, Jake knew that the real battle was just beginning. Lisa Chun sat at her desk in the empty police station, the glow of her computer screen casting eerie shadows across her face. The events of the day had left her shaken, but she pushed her fear aside, focusing on the task at hand. Jake was counting on her, and she wasn't about to let him down. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she delved deeper into the mystery of Nightshade. The code had appeared multiple times in the Thompsons' financial records, always in connection with large, complex transactions. But what was it? A project? A person? A place? As she dug deeper, cross-referencing the Nightshade mentions with other data they had gathered, a pattern began to emerge. Lisa's eyes widened as she realized what she was looking at. "Oh my God," she whispered to the empty room. Nightshade wasn't just a code name. It was a massive data repository, a collection of files so sensitive, so potentially damaging, that its very existence had been buried under layers of secrecy and misdirection. Lisa's heart raced as she pieced together the implications. If she was reading this correctly, the Nightshade files contained evidence of corruption and illegal activities reaching into the highest levels of government and some of the world's largest corporations. Wire fraud, money laundering, illegal weapons deals, manipulation of global markets. The scope of it was staggering. And at the center of it all was Project Eclipse, the shadowy organization that seemed to be pulling all the strings. Lisa was so engrossed in her discovery that she almost missed the soft sound of footsteps approaching her desk. She looked up, startled, to see Captain Reeves standing there, his face grave. "Chun," he said softly, "what are you still doing here? It's the middle of the night." Lisa hesitated for a fraction of a second. She trusted the captain, but after what had happened to Jake and Alex, she couldn't be sure who was truly on their side. "I'm just following up on some leads, sir," she said carefully. "The Thompson case is complicated." The captain's eyes narrowed slightly. Complicated how? Lisa took a deep breath, making a split-second decision. Sir, I think we've stumbled onto something big. Bigger than anything we've dealt with before. She quickly filled him in on the events at the railway station, Jake's narrow escape, and what she had discovered about Nightshade. As she spoke, she watched the captain's face carefully, looking for any sign of recognition or alarm. To her relief, the captain's expression remained one of concern and growing anger. This is unbelievable, he said when she had finished. Chun, do you understand what you're saying? If this is true, we're talking about a conspiracy that could shake the foundations of our government. Lisa nodded grimly. I know, sir, and I think that's why the Thompsons ran. They must have gotten access to the Nightshade file somehow, realized what they had, and knew they had to disappear. The captain ran a hand over his face, looking suddenly old and tired. Where's Martinez now? In a safe house, Lisa replied. Ought it best if I didn't know the exact location, just in case. The captain nodded in understanding. Smart. Okay, here's what we're going to do. This information doesn't leave this room. As far as anyone else is concerned, you're still working a missing persons case. I'll reach out to some contacts I trust, see if we can get some high-level support without tipping our hand. Lisa felt a wave of relief wash over her. The captain was on their side. They weren't alone in this fight. What about Amy? She asked. Is she still safe? The captain's expression darkened. For now. But if what you've discovered is true, we can't take any chances. I'll make some calls, see about moving her to an even more secure location. As Lisa gathered her things to leave, the captain put a hand on her shoulder. Chun, he said softly. You and Martinez, you've stumbled onto something incredibly dangerous. Watch your back. Trust no one. And be careful. Lisa nodded, feeling the weight of their discovery settling heavily on her shoulders. As she left the station, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the edge of a precipice. One false move, and they could all come crashing down. She made her way home, constantly checking over her shoulder, hyper-aware of every car that passed, every shadow that moved. As she finally closed her apartment door behind her, Lisa allowed herself a moment to breathe. She thought of Jake, out there somewhere alone and in danger. She thought of Amy, an innocent child caught in the middle of a war she didn't even know was being fought. And she thought of the Thompsons on the run, carrying secrets that could change everything. As she settled in for what she knew would be a restless night, Lisa made a silent vow. No matter what it took, no matter the danger, they would see this through. They would uncover the truth about Project Eclipse, expose the corruption hidden in the Nightshade files, and bring Amy's parents home. The game had changed, the stakes had never been higher, but Lisa Chun was ready for the fight of her life. As she finally drifted off to sleep, her last thought was of Jake. Stay safe, partner, she whispered into the darkness. We got a long way to go,